Welcome, dear listeners, to our cinematic storytelling program, where film reels are not just entertainment, but fragments of memory and destiny. Today, let us quiet our souls and drift back to 1964, the year the London sky on the silver screen became more brilliant than ever with the appearance of a nanny descending from the clouds with a black umbrella. The movie Mary Poppins was born, bringing home not only 5 prestigious Oscars and massive box office revenue, but also planting in the hearts of millions of children around the world a belief in magic, in the incantation. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It is a masterpiece about family, happiness, smiles, and humanistic lessons. But ladies and gentlemen, there is a cruel truth. The brighter the light, the longer the shadow cast behind the immortal smiles of the Banks family and their friends lie lives full of tragedy, loneliness, and loss that time has ruthlessly carved upon them. Over 60 years have passed. Let us turn back the pages of the tearful lives of the people who created that legend. Matthew Garber as Michael Banks. In the colorful world of Mary Poppins, little Michael Banks is the embodiment of mischief, innocence, and limitless imagination. With sparkling eyes and a cheeky smile, Matthew Garber, then only 8 years old, conquered the hearts of audiences globally. Along with his sister Jane, Michael was the reason Mary Poppins arrived, and also the character representing all children yearning for parental love. Matthew's natural, unforced acting turned Michael into an icon, a part of childhood memories for generations, propelling the boy to the pinnacle of fame as a promising Disney child star. However, when the stage lights went out, Matthew Garber's life was not shielded by any magic. Born into a family with an artistic tradition in London, Matthew was described as an intelligent, eccentric, and vibrant young man. Unlike many child stars caught in the whirlwind of fame, Matthew chose to enjoy life in his own way. He left the silver screen early, carrying the youthful desire for freedom to set out and explore the world. Matthew's youth consisted of journeys, experiences, and enjoying the wonders life offered far away from the noise of Hollywood. Fate ironically chose the moment the young man was at his most brilliant age to deal a fatal blow. In 1976, during a trip to India to seek spiritual and cultural experiences, Matthew unfortunately contracted hepatitis. Due to youthful ignorance and the lack of medical facilities in a foreign land, he did not realize the severity of his condition. The disease silently ravaged the young man's body, quickly progressing to hemorrhagic pancreatitis, an irreversible death sentence at that time. His family tried every way to bring him back to London for treatment, but all efforts seemed too late against the cruelty of the disease. The promising journey of Michael Banks had to stop suddenly and painfully. On June 13, 1977, Matthew Garber took his last breath at the Royal Free Hospital in London at the age of only 21. His passing was a huge shock, leaving infinite grief for colleagues and audiences. His body was quietly cremated, but the image of the boy Michael Banks with a radiant smile will remain immortal on the screen as a testament to a natural but ill-fated talent. Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins. No one can forget Mary Poppins, the perfect nanny in every way who brought magic to number 17 Cherry Tree Lane. Julie Andrews, with a voice as high and clear as crystal and a noble, warm demeanor, created an irreplaceable cinematic monument. At the age of 29, she won the Oscar for Best Actress for this very debut film role, Julie Andrews. Mary Poppins is not just a character, but a symbol of healing hope and unconditional love. However, behind that elegant exterior and the smile always on her lips was a Julie Andrews who had to fight secret pains from childhood, born into a poor and broken family. Her childhood was haunted by an alcoholic and violent stepfather. Music was the only salvation helping her escape the dark reality. She rose from the mud to become Britain's national treasure, conquering both Hollywood and Broadway. Her career was as brilliant as a dream, with The Sound of Music and a series of other classics. But the greatest tragedy for a singer is losing their voice, and fate cruelly took away Julie's most precious asset. In 1997, a vocal cord cyst surgery, thought to be simple, failed miserably. That medical error permanently destroyed her legendary 4-octave voice. For Julie, it was not just losing a professional tool, but losing a part of her soul. She fell into deep depression in agonizing pain, like a nightingale with broken wings. But then with extraordinary bravery, she picked herself up from the ashes. She turned to writing children's books, directing theater and acting in non-singing roles, continuing to dedicate herself to art in a different way. The resilience of Mary Poppins on screen seems to have seeped into Julie Andrews' real life. Today, stepping into 2025 at the respectable age of 90, Julie Andrews remains a living icon of willpower and grace. She no longer sings with the angelic voice of yesteryear, but her presence remains an endless source of inspiration. Her journey is eloquent proof that even when stripped of wings, one can still learn to fly in a different way, and her legacy will last forever with time. Glynis Johns as Winifred Banks. In the film, Glynis Johns played Winifred Banks, a dynamic mother and a social activist fighting for women's rights with the witty song Sister, Suffragette. With her signature husky voice and radiant smile, she brought the image of a modern woman loving her family but full of social aspirations. The role of Winifred Banks was a bright spot, bringing laughter and warmth etched into the childhood memories of millions of viewers. However, in stark contrast to the joy and happiness on screen, Glynis Johns' real life was a chain of prolonged romantic tragedies. She went through 4 marriages, and painfully all 4 ended in failure. The first husband was abusive, the second parted in bitterness, and subsequent relationships brought only disappointment. Each divorce was a time her heart was torn apart, leaving mental scars that never fully healed. Loneliness gnawed at the soul of the talented artist over the years. However, the greatest pain of a human life is not the betrayal of a partner, but the scene of the white hair mourning the black hair parents burying their children. In 2007, her only son, actor Gareth Forwood, died of a heart attack while undergoing cancer treatment. This loss completely broke Glynis. She admitted it was a heart-rending pain, pushing her into the final years of living in extreme solitude with no family left to lean on. She spent her last days in a nursing home in Los Angeles, quietly gnawing on glorious memories intertwined with the sadness of a century. On January 4, 2024, Glynis Johns' century-long journey closed. She passed away at the age of 100. Taking with her a golden era of Hollywood. Although leaving in silence as the melody of Send in the Clowns played to bid farewell, the whole world still bowed in respect to a star who lived a full life with art, even if the price to pay was ultimate loneliness. Dick Van Dyke as Bert. Dick Van Dyke, the multi-talented actor, took on the role of Bert, the cheerful chimney sweep Mary Poppins' wonderful companion. Not only that, he also excellently transformed into the elderly bank tycoon, Mr. Dawes Sr. With a sunny smile, skillful dance moves, and boundless optimism, Dick Van Dyke's Bert is the embodiment of the joy of living. Although criticized for his inaccurate Cockney accent, his charm erased all flaws, turning Bert into one of the most lovable characters in Disney history. But behind that radiant smile was a persistent battle with inner demons. From the peak years of his career, Dick Van Dyke slid into alcoholism. He drank to hide his shyness, drank to face pressure, and gradually lost control. The 1970s were a dark period when he repeatedly had to enter rehab, losing the trust of family and colleagues. Not stopping there, heavy smoking also nearly cost him his life due to lung cancer, and the pain piled up when his son also got entangled in the cycle of drugs. His life seemed to be a dramatic action movie script with narrow escapes from death. In 2013, his Jaguar suddenly caught fire violently on the highway. He was trapped in a sea of fire and was saved in a split second by a passerby. That moment facing the Reaper seemed to be a wake-up call, as well as proof of this man's fierce vitality, overcoming addiction, illness, and accidents. Dick Van Dyke found himself again. Today, stepping into 2025, Dick Van Dyke has reached the 100-year milestone. He is no longer as agile as the Bert of yesteryear, but his smile remains intact with warmth. He still appears, still sings, still inspires the world about revival. His story is proof that even if one falls into the abyss, one can still climb back up, shake off the soot, and smile at the sun. David Tomlinson as George Banks. David Tomlinson successfully portrayed the character George Banks, a father, a rigid banker who valued discipline over emotion, but eventually learned to open his heart. The psychological transformation of Mr. Banks from a dry man into a warm father, knowing how to fix a torn kite to play with his children, is one of the most beautiful emotional ranges of the film. Tomlinson became the representative face of the stern but loving British father figure. Few people know that to express the pain and loneliness of the character, David Tomlinson had to taste terrible tragedies in real life. His first wife, Mary Lindsay, inflicted a wound in his heart that never healed. In 1943, just a short time after marriage, she committed suicide along with her 2 children from a previous relationship in a shocking case in New York. The obsession with death and loss haunted Tomlinson throughout his life, a darkness he always hid behind comedic roles. Although he later found happiness with his second wife and had 4 children, fate did not let go. His son suffered from autism, and he spent his life fighting for and caring for him. In the final years of his life, tragedy struck again when a medical injury left him partially paralyzed and lost his ability to speak. For an actor, not being able to talk is torture. He lived his last days in silence, depression, and physical pain. The turbulent journey of the real life. George Banks stopped in June 2000. David Tomlinson died in his sleep at the hospital at the age of 83. He left, leaving behind a massive cinematic legacy and a life story full of energy, but also much pain, where the smile on screen was exchanged for silent tears in real life. Rita Shaw as Mrs. Brill. Rita Shaw played the cook Mrs. Brill, a woman always busy, often nagging, but actually caring deeply for the Banks family, with a large physique and a booming voice. Rita Shaw brought a character full of life and authenticity. She represented the devoted workers contributing to keeping the fire burning for number 17. However, Rita Shaw's life did not have the warmth of the kitchen she managed in the film. A broken marriage and having to raise a child alone placed a heavy burden of making a living on her shoulders. Loneliness and life pressure pushed her to cigarettes. She smoked a lot, considering it her only friend to relieve stress. This harmful habit planted the seeds for a vicious disease later on. Her health declined rapidly, forcing her to leave the stage and screen earlier than planned. Emphysema from years of smoking ravaged her lungs, making every breath difficult. On January 8, 1982, Rita Shaw passed away in California at the age of 69 due to complications from lung disease. She left when not yet too old, leaving behind regret for a talent specializing in supporting but colorful roles. Karen Dotrice as Jane Banks. Little Jane Banks, pretty smart and somewhat more mature than her brother Michael, was portrayed by child actress Karen Dotrice, with bright eyes and pure beauty. Karen and Matthew Garber created the most adorable screen siblings of that time. The role of Jane Banks took the 9-year-old girl from a normal child to an international star sought after and admired. Audiences believed that Mary Poppins' magic would forever protect the girl. But in reality, glory coming too soon became a burden. Karen Dotrice grew up with the terrible pressure of fame, always compared and framed in the image of the obedient little Jane. Her adult life encountered many obstacles, especially her first marriage to actor Alex Hyde-White, which ended in betrayal and divorce in 1992. Emotional trauma and the harshness of Hollywood left her tired and weary, realizing the vanity of fame. Karen made a brave decision to give up acting. She withdrew from the limelight to seek the peace she had lost since childhood. She remarried and devoted her time to being a normal mother and wife. Karen admitted that she wanted her children to have a proper childhood, not stolen by cameras and scripts. Today, at the age of 70, Karen Dotrice is living a quiet and happy life with her family. Although she no longer appears on screen to the audience, she remains the sweet little Jane Banks. Her choice to leave the aura is proof that true happiness sometimes lies in the simplest things, not in applause. E.D. Wynn as Uncle Albert. In Mary Poppins, the character Uncle Albert, with bursts of laughter that made him float to the ceiling, is one of the most impressive scenes. Ed Wynn, the King of Clowns of America, delivered a brilliant performance at the age of 78. His laughter had the power to spread, making anyone watching the movie feel relieved and happy. He was the embodiment of pure joy, defying gravity and sorrow. But paradoxically, the man who brought laughter to the whole world carried a heart full of scratches. Ed Wynn's life was a series of struggles with gambling addiction, which caused him to go bankrupt many times and nearly ruined his career. Family tragedy also haunted him, with 3 broken marriages, leaving loneliness and separation from loved ones. The old artist always had to wear a mask of happiness while his soul was screaming from pain and emptiness. In the final years of his life, Ed Wynn's health declined severely due to esophageal cancer. Despite physical pain, he still tried to work, still tried to smile for the camera until the very last moments. He didn't want the audience to see him weak. He wanted to leave as a bringer of joy. In June 1966, just 2 years after Mary Poppins was released, Ed Wynn passed away in Beverly Hills at the age of 79. On his deathbed, he left a message. "Thank you, God, Edwin." A touching farewell. He is gone, but Uncle Albert's laughter still echoes forever, reminding us of a great artist who drained himself to buy joy for life. Elsa Lanchester as Katie Nana. Before Mary Poppins arrived, the Banks family had a nanny named Katie. Nana, played by Elsa Lanchester, although appearing only briefly at the beginning of the film, with a grumpy face and helplessness before the children, Elsa managed to leave the mark of a veteran actor. She was famous for eccentric roles and was an icon of classic horror films as the Bride of Frankenstein. Behind that eccentric and distinct exterior was an Elsa Lanchester, deeply lonely in her own home. She married the talented actor Charles Laughton, but that marriage was just a screen. Her husband was gay, and hiding his true sexuality made both of them live in torment. Elsa had no children, lacked true conjugal love, and gradually turned to alcohol to relieve the sorrow her eccentricity increased as a way to defend herself against the world, causing friends to gradually drift away. Her health declined seriously in her final years due to the consequences of alcoholism and old age diseases. She suffered 2 strokes and severe pneumonia, living completely dependent on the care of the Motion Picture Relief Fund. The woman who once terrified the screen was now weaker and lonelier than ever. Elsa Lanchester took her last breath in December 1986 in Los Angeles at the age of 84. She departed, closing a life of sacrifice for her husband's reputation and art, leaving behind an obsession with the loneliness of the artist behind the velvet curtain. Marjorie Bennett as Miss Lark. Marjorie Bennett played Miss Lark, the eccentric lady always carrying her pet dog for a walk on Cherry Tree Lane. Although appearing only fleetingly, the image of Miss Lark contributed to creating the fun and quirky atmosphere of the neighborhood. She was a veteran actress, always giving her all to even the smallest roles. But behind Miss Lark's social smile was the broken heart of a mother. In 1950, her son died in a tragic car accident. The pain of losing a child was too great a shock for Marjorie to ever truly recover from. She buried herself in work to forget the longing, accepting any role, no matter how small. However, mistakes in financial management left her destitute, going bankrupt in the final years of her life. Friends often recounted that deep sadness always hid in her eyes. She worked tirelessly despite exhausted health just to make a living and run away from painful memories. On June 14, 1982, Marjorie Bennett passed away from a heart attack in Hollywood at the age of 86. Her ashes were buried quietly, closing the life of an artist who used a smile to hide the salty tears of fate. Hermione Baddeley as Ellen. Hermione Baddeley played the maid Ellen, a character who often caused tragicomic situations in the Banks household. With a plump figure, a thick Cockney accent, and a natural acting style, she successfully portrayed the image of a loyal but worrisome and slightly shrewish maid. Although only a supporting role, Hermione Baddeley's Ellen was an indispensable piece, creating the vivid picture of the film. In real life, Hermione was a respected stage and film actress in the UK. However, her love life was extremely rough. She went through 2 failed marriages and many unfulfilled romances, the most painful of which was the relationship with actor Lawrence Harvey. Betrayal and abandonment made her heart become callous, lonely, and bitter. She threw herself into work as a painkiller, believing that only the stage would never betray her. But fate seemed to want to test her to the end. In the final years of her life, Hermione suffered from severe epilepsy that caused her to lose to speak. For an actress famous for her sharp delivery, losing her voice was a tragedy, indescribable in words. She lived her last days in forced silence and enveloping loneliness. The journey of Maid Ellen ended in August 1986 in Los Angeles at the age of 79. She left carrying the secrets of a turbulent life, leaving the audience with the image of a funny woman on film completely opposite to the tragic fate in real life. Arthur Maillet as Mr. Dawes Jr. Arthur Millay, then only 37 years old, wore excellent makeup to play the trembling old man Mr. Dawes Jr., the son of the banker, with lethargic eyes and a shaky gait. Arthur deceived the audience's vision, making everyone believe he was a real old man. To transform into roles much older than his real age became his trademark throughout his career. Arthur Mellett's real life was a sad, low note. After a broken marriage, he chose a closed lifestyle, shunning the bustling urban places. He lived alone, trudging between the film set and an empty house. In the final years of his life, he had to battle Parkinson's disease, causing his body to tremble and making walking difficult. A heartbreaking image reminiscent of the very role of Mr. Dawes Jr. years ago. But this time it was not acting. Tragedy struck in 2000 when a serious fall shattered his bones. This accident left him bedridden, spending the last days of his life in pain and helplessness. On May 18, 2013, Arthur Millay passed away in Santa Monica at the age of 85. He left, quietly just as he had lived, leaving behind a unique acting legacy that few could copy.